And so, as we start out, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask them some questions. But when you start out, just tell them where you're working at, what you do. You're a part owner, and y'all all have 3 different things that you do, so it works out great. But how do you be a Christian at work? And then at the end, we're just going to open it up, and they're just going to share whatever's on their mind that the Lord has put on them for several minutes about how they are a Christian at work. Because we don't want to just turn it on and off. It's a part of our life. God is in everything. And when He says, "Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven," that means in your job, your work, your family, et cetera, et cetera. And so we'll just start out with Chad. And so you just start off, tell them what you do, tell them your name, because there's some people here for almost the first time. And why don't we just introduce yourself, and we'll come back around to the first question. Yeah.
Okay. My name's Chad Castleman. For those that don't know me, I'm the operations manager at Native Forest Nursery in Chatsworth, and we grow hardwood trees and shrub seedlings, several million of them. Decent-sized operation. It's a small business, but we've got a staff of about 8 full-time people and anywhere from 12 to 30 seasonal workers, just depending what time of year we're in. And I'm in charge of all of it. So.
I'm Sean. I am the assistant general manager at Old Navy in Calhoun. I fold T-shirts.
Okay, you're being very humbling. He's also over people that fold T-shirts.
So I have a staff of approximately 4,000 to 5,000 people that hate me. No, I'm not sure I should be up here. No, 20 to 25 millennials, and the store probably generates somewhere between $4 to $4.5 million a year in revenue. And I've been in retail for almost 30 years. So far. And I have at times been dispatched to other stores to fix problems. Yeah. So I had no longing to be a district manager or anything like that. I like my life. But I can go fix problems at other stores from time to time, yeah. So.
My name is Lois Blockley. I manage him. No, just kidding. That's my full-time job. No. I am in long-term, I am the early intervention coordinator for Babies Can't Wait for the North Georgia Health District. To put that simply, I am the director of the special education program for birth to 3-year-olds for Whitfield, Murray, Fannin, Gilmer, Pickens, and Cherokee counties. We serve approximately 360 children and families in those counties, and I manage 2 full-time staff. I need 2 more, but that's another story. And then I have 75 contractors who work under me as well.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask a question, then all of them can answer it, or none of them can answer it. I'm not going to call in any person, but just have whatever they feel like. And so, when you're thinking about work, we spend so much time in it, probably more time than we're sleeping. Why do you think God has you doing what you're doing, and do you think that's where you're supposed to be, and why?
Chad.
How could I refuse? So, why God has me where I'm at. If I had a nickel for every time I asked Him that over the last 6.5 years, it's really one of those. But just to clear away the fog from this question, it's really pretty simple. It's there's a few very simple things. It gives me an opportunity to use the gifts that God's given me to take money out of the world and move it into the kingdom of God. It also allows me to impart the kingdom of God to customers, employees, those kind of things. And I don't say this lightly because, literally, I have wrestled with God over this position. And I know y'all, most of you that know me know kind of the struggles and all this. And we're in a great place. But I was talking to Hillary yesterday. I was like, would you say that I love my job? And she said, no, I don't think so. And then what you got to understand is I have had jobs that I've literally loved. Like I would spring out of bed every morning like, I can't wait to go do this today. And I'm not really there. But what I do know is I have questioned God. I have, curse might be a little too strong over this. But one thing I know is that I've done enough things to try to get his blessing to do something different that I haven't been able to. And so I know by default that is where I'm supposed to be. And so then it's like, okay, I'm here now. The question, why am I here? And when you see the growth of the business and the success, and you see the growth in people's lives, and being a manager, anybody that's been a manager knows that it's the most thankless job in the history of the world. But when you muddle through that and you take your lumps because you know that it's your charge to be a positive influence in somebody's life, and you see fruit from that, it's a real blessing. I mean, it's a bigger blessing than a paycheck. I promise you, it really is. So anyway, I think I'm out on that one.
Wonder Woman?
Thanks, Superman.
Who's the moderator here?
He's
Y'all
the
hear
comedian.
me?
He's
Y'all
the
hear me
comedian.
enough on Sunday mornings. We'll get them first, and then I'll get
That's some
Adam.
romantic sweet talk. Wonder Woman and Superman.
We've only been married 28 years, so, we kind of know each other a little bit. So my story's a little long. I'll try to keep it short, which is impossible for me. So I started out fresh out of college with a social work degree, thinking I was going to reform the social work world. That didn't happen. Burned out fast. We were engaged.
Don't blame it all on him.
No, we were engaged, and I put in for our honeymoon, and he said, tell them this is your resignation. You're not going to stay in this field. So I tried other avenues of social work, and we ended up having our first child, and I always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. Anyway, so I stayed home for 7 years. Our oldest twin ended up being autistic, and I fell in love with special needs children. So I ended up, when the twins started pre-K, I became a parapro in one of the pre-K classrooms, and the lady I taught with said, why aren't you teaching? And I was like, because I don't have a teaching degree. She's like, you need to get your teaching degree. So I went back to college and got my master's in special ed and started teaching special ed, and taught for 6 years in Murray County. Loved teaching, hated public school. And I was introduced to Babies Can't Wait and became a contractor with Babies Can't Wait, where I actually went into the homes and got to do what I loved, which was working one-on-one with families and actually influencing children, and ended up in the office and became the manager of all these people, which I never thought I would end up doing. But I am now influencing more families than I ever could have as a one-on-one person. So that's how I ended up where I am. You just never know where God's going to put you.
So you feel good about that's where the Lord's got you.
At times.
Did you struggle as much as he did, accepting what he had called you to?
Yes.
No. There's times where I've cried at night and thinking, why am I here? But I know why I'm there. I just sometimes think there's got to be more. Can I not be doing something else, Lord? I have these ideas in my head where I could be doing something for a nonprofit organization and be doing something more Christian-like, but at the same time, I am in a very secular industry, and there are a lot of other believers, and we build each other up. So there's no doubt I'm where I'm supposed to be. It just is hard at times.
So, Sean, do you prophesy to the T-shirts?
What?
Do you prophesy to the T-shirts?
I do.
So tell us about your journey. How do you feel? Is this where God wants you? Did you struggle with it? Is it
Yes,
hard?
yes, and yes. By show of hands, who in here is good at something that they don't care about?
Good at something you don't care about.
That you don't really,
That the world doesn't care about?
that you don't personally.
Oh, okay.
You're good at something that, yeah, that's me. My first job was retail when I was 16. And I wish I had never made that decision. Retail life is tough, but I'm hearing a theme. I've had the Lord tell me before, you're going to have way more fruit in your work life ministry than you'll ever have in your church ministry.
Wow.
Because every day I get to engage a young man and a young woman who's not quite sure about life. And I only try to break off a piece of the bread that from experience, not what I theorize might be good for them, and share with them what I've been through. I am amazed at how many of these kids are so fatherless. And I've seen bad managers that don't really want to be there, and they want to do the absolute minimum in the life of that young man and young woman and expect great results, and that's just not the way it works. These kids come not assembled, okay? They're not assembled. They're not done. And if you truly want to be an effective manager and you truly want the best possible performance out of them, you've got to go ahead and accept the fact that they need a father. Now, I don't go in there telling them I'm a dad. I do it covertly. Okay? And you have to take an active role in the maturing process for that young man and young woman. Okay? I have kids. Well, put it this way. 1998, me and Lois, bad English, moved here with a newborn baby girl, and I was working for Nike at the time. Hired a young man named Brett. He was 18 years old. And you don't think kids are watching you, really. He walks up to me one day after working with me for about 6 months. He said, "Sean, I know this sounds really cheesy, but I want to be like you." And I was like, "Oh, son, please don't do that." But he liked what God was doing in my life. Fast forward 22 years or so, and I am working in Woodstock. Was it last year?
He skipped a few years. About 8, no.
Woodstock.
I know, no. You skipped a few years. About 15 years ago, he was one of Brett's groomsmen in his wedding. So he's had that much influence in his life that he was actually in his wedding. And now
Woodstock, and I was miserable. You see why I married her. Besides the fact she's hot. But anyway, so I'm struggling in Woodstock. I had to take a job down there, and Brett calls me up. Says, "I got an AGM position available. You interested?" And I said, "I'll see you Monday." I'm working for the kid I hired 22 years ago.
Wow.
Okay, and I'm happy to be the number 2 guy because I see my kid again, and I continue the process 22 years later, where he's the boss, and I don't ever surf that, but behind closed doors, he's like, "Okay, Sean, what should I do next?" You know. So I get to invest in his life again. So the reason I'm there is for these kids, you know, and the fact that I cannot sit still behind a desk. So.
And he's tried. Am I still on or not?
Yeah, you're
okay,
on.
Okay, I can't hear. Sorry.
So you hadn't mentioned much stress in the job. He mostly, but when there's stress in the job, how do you walk through that as a Christian, and it just is tough and it's not fun, and how do you handle that? Because I know you've had stress because I know you. Know you've had stress just because I know all 3 of you. How do you do that? You know, because all of us have stress. It'd be different circumstances. Do you have any advice for any of you have advice for how you get through the day-to-day sometimes?
Yeah, I can hit that one just based on my experience. And this has been this position that I'm currently in has been like the ultimate soul crusher. I mean, I don't even know how else to describe it. Like, I don't know what a nervous breakdown was. Well, I do now. Okay. And, you know, it's when you know that you are where God says you're supposed to be, it then becomes his problem. And that's really the only way I've been able to cope with it. Because literally it's like, all right, God, I ain't got nothing left here. I got no more wisdom on this problem. I got no more energy to keep moving in this. So either you're going to have to come on behind me or give me some wisdom, or it's just going to be over. You know, I'm not going to be able to be here where, as best I know, this is where I'm supposed to be. That's kind of a extreme example. There's also like just the daily walk with God where, you know, you get the fruit of his peace in your life that helps you, you know, with the other 90%. And then when it gets to the big fat hairy 10%, it's like, okay, God, you called me here. Saddle up. Let's go. I'll do whatever you say, but you got to be right there with me. And he has been. And it's been, I don't know, hindsight, as they say, is 20/20. And when I look backwards on those experiences, like, there's been things that have happened, like, literally miracles. Like, I've got some crop that I grew 4 times more than I was ever going to sell. And, you know, that's like the difference between a good year and a really good year. And we sold it all. And it's like, how's that stuff happen repeatedly? You know, I know how, but anyway.
Snuggle Bear? No? You want me to go? Okay. All right. In working in a high-stress retail environment, I've had to relearn all over again what it means to enter the rest of the Lord. Just stop. Put a poker face on, because in my world, they'll give you tasks and assignments that far outpace your skills and abilities and time. And they know they're doing it. Okay, that's the Babylonian system. Okay, drive, slave away, and you're considered noble in the American economy by working yourself to death, and without compensation, without any real reward, and then you collapse at the end of the week, and the people admire you because you gave your all.
Wow.
That's not living your best life. So I intentionally rebelled. Shrewdly. I said, I'm going to do this job, and then when it hits 5 o'clock, I'm taillights. Good luck replacing me. Finding anybody else who will care and try to do the job that I do consistently. You know you're being unreasonable. I know you know you're unreasonable. Let's find a place to compromise. But in a simple way, as Chad was defining, God is my provision, not my paycheck.
That's good.
Okay? It is God who gives us the ability to generate wealth. And there have been times, as my wife well knows, by my own dumb decisions, that I've had to eat from the hand of the Lord. I was unemployed for 13 months. And God said, you're going to eat my hand for a while. There will be times and seasons, sometimes where you'll do that. There'll be other times and seasons where God will give you the ability to take care of yourself and provide an income and honor God with a portion of your income. But God is my provision, not my paycheck. God is in control of my employer. And if that weren't true, the Bible wouldn't say the heart of the king, didn't say saved king or pagan king, it just said king is in the hand of the Lord. He can turn it left and he can turn it right. So when I realized that, I took a deep breath and calmed down, and people got addicted to my calm at work. So that's how I coped. Was that good? Okay.
I know, Lois, with you, it's always the same thing. They'll let you work 80 hours a week and it not be enough, and they won't hire your help. Personally, how do you get through that?
Well, I'm salaried, so I have to work however many hours it takes to get the job done. And because of budget constraints, I can't hire people now to help me anymore, so I have to work. Working for public health during COVID, we were told all hands on deck COVID, so I had to run my department and work for infectious disease. It was tough. I was sometimes putting in 60 to 80 hours a week. And thankfully, they did tell us to keep track of our overtime, and I didn't have to use any sick leave or annual leave for over a year. Anytime I needed to be off, I just used some of my comp time. So I have quite a bank of leave right now, which is kind of nice. But it was tough. The only thing that helped me through at that time was a lot of prayer. And I am really good at coming home and turning everything off. I didn't have young kids anymore. If I had young kids at home, I could not have done this job. So I think that was a blessing. My kids are grown. My poor husband. I have one child left at home who's an adult, and he takes care of himself. Thank goodness.
Don't talk about Sean that way.
Well, yeah. He's my fourth child, but yeah, that's beside the point. I'm not supposed to say that joke in church anymore, am I? But oh well. It just came out. Now, during COVID, I did learn self-care. I made a decision for myself. I went on Nutrisystem, of all things, and I started losing weight. And it has been the best thing for me. Still on Nutrisystem, almost 2 years later. A year and a half later? It's been up and down a little bit. There's been times where chocolate's been my friend. Still like my chocolate, still like my ice cream. But self-care helps. And I do come home and turn the world off at times and have to reset myself. I've also been on the floor in my bedroom praying and in tears. Prayer is a definite good friend. So, and there's been people here who have listened. And no doubt friendship helps. So.
Wow, I'm about to cry over here just listen to it. But it's good. So with the people that you manage, all of you manage them from different perspectives, but how does the Lord have you manage them besides just doing tasks? You alluded to it a little bit, Sean, to try to be bring your Christianity into that. Anybody wants to jump in? These things are almost, would y'all rather get in a chair? Are you all right?
I'm good.
All right, I'm cool.
I'm realistic about where their head is. Most of those kids, my workforce is college students. They're in process already of getting ready for a degree for a field they think they want. And alongside them, while they're doing their tasks for me, because I have tasks for them every day, I ask them a question because I'm most interested in the way God made them. Not the way they necessarily understand, but I love seeing the light go on when they discover something about themselves they didn't know. And I'll ask them this question. Invariably, it always comes around when I'm getting to know them. I said, if starting tomorrow, you had access to any resource you needed, whether it's money, time, or relationships, and you knew you could not fail, what would you do? And they just stare at me blankly, like, I would sleep in. I remember this. When I was 19, 20 years old, I thought to myself, that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself when you're 19 and 20 and you're in college. And like, you need to pick what you're going to be for the rest of your life, son. I don't remember how I got to the school this morning. Much less 5 years down the road.
It was called an El Camino.
It was an El Camino is my day. But, because I remember somebody asking me the question, what would your 60-year-old self ask your 20-year-old self? I said, I wouldn't ask him anything. I'd tell him something. I'd say, calm down. You don't have to know.
That's good.
You really don't have to know. There are some special folks out there who had a very strong unction earlier on in their life that they wanted to do, be, or have something. Okay? And it's more rare than you think. most of my 20s were spent figuring out what I did not want to do. It was bumper cars, like, wham, that sucks. Wham, that also sucks. Wham, not as bad, but I don't want to stay here. Wham! You know? And I had ADD before it was a thing. So in my day, it was called stupid. And so I had some issues with my confidence. Didn't realize. But I did have teachers say, Sean, you seem to be so intelligent. What's wrong? And I would say, I hate you. That's what. With a white hot passion, I hate algebra. Okay? And just had to but you sort it out. You sort it out. Sometimes you'll know. There's some folks who when they were a little girl dreamed of being a doctor. Well, great, okay. But most of us don't know. And the thing that really, really helps me to help them was realizing they don't have to have it figured out right at the beginning. But if I can start pointing them towards who they are and help them discover their identity, those kids will run through brick walls for me at work. They will, because they know Sean cares. It's not perfect, but Sean cares. So
maybe just share his mic.
Yeah,
I don't know what's going on with that one.
Battery's dead. Okay. That's it. Just help them figure out. Now, sometimes they'll stay. They're like, "Oh, I want to reach y'all," and I'll try to talk them out of it, because that's what a good father does. But some of them love it. But I'm help them get to where they want to be, and then while they're with me, they'll give me their best. If they know I care, I can get the best performance. But if I just like, would you please go over there and fold before I strangle you? If I come in with that type of energy, because they don't pay attention to what I say, they pay attention to what you do, right? They don't want you to be perfect. They want you to be authentic, right? And say, hey, I'm just having a bad day. And I've apologized to staff before when I was wrong in something. And they would look at me like, you're the boss. I said, that's no excuse for me to talk to you the way I talked to you, that I was wrong. You're important to me. And they start tearing up. I said, oh, don't start crying. I'm going to start crying, you know. But it's the last place existing in American culture where people still meet face to face consistently. YouTube is not, and Facebook is not a substitute for that. So, Amazon, yeah.
I guess my situation's very, very different. I sit in an office by myself most of the time. I do manage a group of professionals, OTPT speech. I have one family counselor who works for me, and then special instructors who are mostly special ed teachers. And then I have an office staff of 2, which, like I said, needs to be 4. A whole other story.
And there's a significant portion of them that think they're all smarter than Lois. And I promise you they're not. They're not. And it's not just because it's my wife. They're not smarter than my wife.
But the people I work with, they have their degrees. They have been doing what they've been doing for the most part for a long time. They know their jobs. They know their professions very well. They may not understand all the paperwork. That's where they come to me for. And how do I do this for billing? How do I do this? Make sure this is legal according to federal standards. To make sure we're doing this all correctly. So I do a lot more guidance on that side. But I have a mixture of people. Some are believers, some are not. Some are conservative, some are liberal. And I have to guard my tongue a lot. So I live by example. I think a lot of them have heard me say, I'll pray for you. They've heard me say, I'm heading to worship practice, or I'm heading to church. I'll be at church Sunday or whatever. They've heard me say it. They know my stance. I don't talk politics at work. because it'll get you into trouble every time because you just don't know someone's beliefs. And I would rather be a positive influence than a negative influence. And there's nothing that gets someone's shackles up more than attacking their belief system. So I don't talk politics, but I love them where they are. And I saw something on Facebook last night. One of my service coordinators posted something that shocked me. I knew she was very liberal. She's young. And she posted that her partner has come out as transgender. And it shocked me because her partner is her husband. And they have a child. So I'm not going to react to it. I'm going to love her where she is and hopefully be a positive influence in her life. So, and at work, we have Christians and we have non-Christians and we have conservatives and we have liberals who work in our buildings. And on a daily basis, I hear things both positive and negative about our government and different people in our government. And I just live according to my belief system, and they hear things out of my mouth. I might go down the hallway singing a praise and worship song. Don't think twice about it. Do I shove it down their throats? No. I don't play music at work because if I'm singing, I'm not reading what's on the screen. I'm not doing my job. But that doesn't mean if I'm heading to the restroom that I might not be singing. And they do hear me from time to time, and then I realize I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing, and I might be singing off key, and that's not what I want to do. So I don't want them to hear me singing off key. I'd rather they hear me singing with, the praise and worship team.
Can Jesus fix your voice? That'd be
some auto-correction.
Yeah.
But anyway, but it's touchy when you're a believer in a secular workforce and you want to be a positive influence and not turn people off. So I think most of the people I work with do know I'm a believer. And I've heard some of them, they're in the break room and they're talking about certain negative things about very conservative politicians. And I'll come in the break room and they stop talking. So I know they know where I stand. So it's one of those things where you have to decide who you want to be and how you want your influence to be in the workplace.
I'll tell you real quick, influence, it made me think this. It was a quote by C.S. Lewis. He said, he was using the word cobbler. You know what a cobbler is? Someone who makes shoes. He said, the world doesn't need cobblers to make shoes with little crosses on them. The world needs cobblers who make excellent shoes. Christian cobblers to make excellent shoes. Your first line of credibility is doing your job well. Because if you don't do your job well, you lose Christian witness, right?
Chad, you've got
permanent employees, because you're agriculture, you got seasonal workers. I've seen you. How do you relate to all of them and try to filter them through Christianity?
It's just so interesting managing people. I liked it better when I was being managed. So I was a good employee from a work perspective, but I was also a pain in the butt because I would always be asking them all these questions. Well, this is stupid. Why are we doing it? How was that guy? But anyway, now that the buck stops with me, it's like I've got pretty simple goals. I want everybody that works there to know that I care about them. I want them to know that I'm going to respect them. And because it's work, we also have to know that we're not always going to agree on stuff. And when the decision needs to be made, that's my job. And when I make it, I need you to do it. But it's just, how do I say this? Like when you work with people long enough, you don't have to say anything. They see your actions, they see your work ethic, they see the respect. And like Lois, I can shut down a conversation faster than anybody just by walking in the room. And that used to bother me, but these days I take it as a sign that we've got a respectful workplace, because they need to know that that's not okay with me to talk a certain way, do certain things, That doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but the fact that when I come in the room it stops, I'm okay with that. So I don't know. And then one thing that I've also come to learn is there is never perfect answers to real world issues. And so sometimes you're talking to the Lord and with a big heavy one, like someone's job's on the line, and I've gone, I've respected them and told them that they've got to do X, Y, or Z. They haven't done it. We've had a follow-up meeting about it, and it's just time to either change the behavior or go in different directions. But you don't, God doesn't always give you a direct answer to every issue, and so you miss some. But that's the hardest ones, is when you miss it, because you've done everything that you know how. But at the end of the day, when you work with people long enough, they begin to see your character. You begin to see their character. You begin to see the things that motivate them. And if you're tuned into that because you care about them, then it's a whole lot easier to help manage them out of their problems or into opportunities or whatever the case may be. So anyway, I think, in general, just by being respectful, trying to keep an honorable workplace, and just genuinely caring about them as people, it's working out. Is it perfect? No. I'm not going to write a book on personnel management, okay? But it is hard, though, and I want to say this on behalf of all the managers in the world, because you're either a manager or you're an employee, but even managers have bosses, right? And it's just, I know I'm going to speak for myself here. I never gave my managers enough credit for the amount of bull that they got to deal with, okay? And it's not, they've got the hyper people like me that are always pushing hard and wanting to make things better and wearing them out that way, and then they got the other end of the spectrum when people just, dragging around, bringing everybody's morale down, not doing their job, everything in between. And it's hard to make all that go sometimes. So anyway,
let me throw this out. We've had several church-wide events on the weekends at his house. Great place to do it, cookouts, etc. And I remember one time when your seasonal workers were there, they sort of, I guess, rotate among different agricultural places. He invited them to the church thing. And you remember that was a couple of years ago at least. And I was impressed with that, just to intermix, have fun, treated them not just as seasonal workers, but in some small way there's a family here, a connection. Why did you do that?
Well, I try to put myself in their shoes.
You've done your other full-time employees several times.
Which we do stuff for those guys regularly because they're from Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala. They're here for 10 months away from their families. They're here for one thing, and that's to make money. Okay, well, you can only work 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for so long before you just need to have a little fun, And so between just giving them an opportunity to, stretch out a little bit, relax, have somebody cook them a meal instead of, eating whatever they eat, having to cook it themselves every night. We just like to do that. And also, that's how you get to know them. We've got really good employee retention with those guys. Like 90% of them come back every year because they like working there. And so, again, when you know about their wife and their family and their issues, it matters to them. And so, anyway, you could say, well, it might be selfish that you want them to come back. Well, yeah, maybe, but I got a business to run. But it's more than that because I genuinely care. I mean, we've had a couple of them that one guy, his dad passed away, like one of my foremen, and he had to leave and go home to the funeral right in the middle of the season. Well, no big deal. And, he needed some money, and he was ashamed to ask me for it. But he did, and I loaned it to him just personally, nothing to do with the business. And he's like, he likes me, and I like him. And so, anyway.
Well, let me ask you this. Out of these three people, you're the only one that you have to go get your work. They come into his place. Yours is all kinds of stuff. How is it being a Christian trying to sell at conferences and praying that leads come in? Do you ever involve the Lord in that process?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because it's. I think it's safe to say that part of my calling is to use this business to produce money. I'm over it. That's just what it is. And in order to do that, you've got to sell the product that you're growing. And so again, it's like, all right, God, you called me here. I see this opportunity. You can give me your peace over this opportunity? I feel that peace. Okay, we're going to go in this direction. And we're going to take a big step in this direction because, I really feel good about it. And it's, I think that's probably the main thing is really like, because we've literally more than doubled since I've been there in our annual revenue, which is still, like I said, we're not Shaw Industries or anything like that, but we've come a long way, and it's just trying to listen. It's trying to with customers too. When you care about customers, they know that. Like I spend more time than I'm going to say anybody in my position in our industry on the road, seeing the results of how our product is doing with whatever their projects are. And that does two things. It shows them that I care. It also gives me a little window into their life. And, that stuff's everywhere. And I don't want to go out there, I don't want to wear out my welcome with people, but 90% of the time, they're thrilled to have somebody that actually cares enough to spend a little money, take a little time, come up and see what's going on. And some of the stuff's like New York, Pennsylvania, Texas, that's why I'm, been vacant here a little bit. But anyway.
It's all for good stuff.
So, yeah, and God is, it's really been amazing. There's so many examples of times where I was just certain we're going to end up throwing, $30,000 worth of plants away that I had excess of too late in the year. And almost every time the phone rings and it's gone, and that goes right to the bottom line. Because it's already been a good year, and then you have those things kind of hit, and it's just like, oh, thank you.
That's cool. Well, why don't you take just 2 or 3 minutes, if y'all want to, just share whatever you want to about being a Christian and how it applies to your workplace. And Dahlia, I'm going to put you on the spot at the end. If you want to share 2 or 3 minutes, she's a pediatrician at White's Pediatrics, on how Christianity plays with you. If you don't want to, it's probably too late now. I'll put you on the spot, but why don't you come on up here and sit up here if you can be thinking about it. Just whatever you want, and one of them can pass you the microphone. And because, totally different field.
So I'll kick off and then I'll hush. But, one thing that has been just a major staple of, I'd say my Christian walk and my business walk is just like a desire to be excellent, and that's easy to say, but I'll give anybody this challenge that if you put your mind in that position, and God is in line with it to where it's not like an unhealthy extent, it'll change so many things. It really will. I can't be convinced otherwise because I've lived it, I've seen it, and so you got to understand. I started out working on a dairy farm, shoveling cow manure. Okay, literally, that's how, little kid up through, first couple of years of college. It's like the most unglorious job you could think of. But that was the cleanest stall anybody ever saw. and the thing was, it wasn't so much about getting the acknowledgement for that. That's just what made the day go by. And, and then it's like, okay, wow. I didn't know I could do it that fast. You come in tomorrow? Okay. That's what it was yesterday. It's on, So anyway, and it's like, even with managing people, it's like you have to walk a line as a business person, as a manager. I want to walk the best line that I can walk. And there's a cost to that, but there's also a reward. And so, there's been times where work's just you get kind of beat down sometimes, and you're like, why am I here? What is this really for me? I'm tired of this job. I've been doing it for 10 years or whatever else. But I think what I want to leave everybody with today is no matter where you're at, I would just challenge you this week to take it up a notch, and stick with it for a little bit. Because if you do it for a couple of days, it probably ain't going to be that much fun, and you're not going to see anything from it. But there's more for you. God has more for you in work, personal life, whatever. And He's given you stuff that are from Him. And so just meditate on those things and do it up for a week or two.
And I work in pediatrics here in town at Prime Pediatrics. It's close to the hospital. I'm from Jamaica. I studied pediatrics in Jamaica. And afterwards, I believe the Lord wanted me to do public health. So I did public health at Hopkins. I worked in the field of HIV, AIDS, for a few years in Africa. Lived in Nigeria, Zambia for a little bit. And then I met my husband and I came back here. During the years in Africa, I did not do clinical pediatrics. I was basically just a project coordinator then. So I was seeing our local partners, looking after the patients, but I was doing the paperwork and the grant and dealing with CDC and USAID and stuff. And during those years, I remember we had some of the international partners that I worked with, and I remember one particular one because it was Catholic. It was with Catholic Relief Services, and we worked with another group which was in our consortium that was also Christian. But I remember there was this one particular person who kept saying, "You have to go back to clinical pediatrics," because they just felt that was where my calling was. And after I married my husband, I got back into clinical pediatrics and ended up afterwards being here in Dalton. I believe God has me here. I've always wanted to please the Lord with what I do in my job, and I've always wanted to serve the children and to serve their family, not just to get their disease bed, or not just to get the diagnosis right, get the right medicine going, but to be a servant and to know that this is what's happening in the family, and God sees them as a whole and wants to reach them, and He uses me, I believe, to reach families and to touch their lives. I haven't always had that view all the time clear in front of me, but I think these last few years, especially these last few months, as I've been through such intense battle, it's been even more clearer that this is who I am and this is what I want to do, and that's why I'm here. And I appreciate everyone who just you have to remind yourself, I'm not in this to make a living. I'm not in this to make a name for myself or to be known, but I'm here because God has me here. And it is a unique place to reach people that a lot of other people will never be able to reach. They are in some of the most vulnerable situations with a sick child, and sometimes they'll tell you about a sick home and a sick family and a sick, whatever situation they're in. And so the Lord has been amazing in, allowing me a lot of times to go beyond what they've come in for. He'll sometimes show me the potential in a child. The parents would come tearing their hair out, and I don't know what to do. My child is crazy. What do I do? And you're able to let them know this is who your child is. And as a parent, this is your privilege to rear a child that's not cookie cutter, that's not a gingerbread person, this child has things that God wants to use to bless other people. Lately, since I've joined Amy's group where we pray for the sick, that dimension to my practice has gotten stronger. I've done it before, but recently I never miss an opportunity to pray for my patients. I never miss an opportunity to ask them, would you like me to pray for you before you leave? And, to pray for the family. Like, especially, my husband had COVID when he, from the consequence of COVID. And so I we're seeing families just go through one virus after another since schools open, and it's all the viruses that should have gone around in winter, and why are we seeing it in summer? So some of these families are literally like they have been battling sickness in their families for weeks and months. And, there are times when they share that with me, and you're able to just pray over that situation and give them that strength and that hope. And even tell the children, like, it's an anxiety, I'm able to even walk through some of the children. What do you do when you're anxious? You talk to it. You tell that thing no. And because we have authority, and they have authority as sons of Adam. And especially if they're Christians, you have authority to talk over your sickness, to talk over what's happening, and it gives me that opportunity. So I just consider it a privilege and an honor whenever I go to work to be able to do that. It is overwhelming. The workload gets heavy, and there are times when I think my schedule is targeted. I'm like, okay, why am I always the one not getting lunch, and why I'm the one leaving an hour and a half late every evening? But I also believe a lot of times it's because there are families that I need to touch, and I'm learning to chill and worship, and chill and trust, and to just go through it, and just know that that's the reason I'm here. I'm there for the Lord, because the Lord wants to touch these families. I go and I just know the Holy Spirit is like, yeah, let's do this together. Yeah, let's do this, and I'm grateful.
I'll follow, because I think it's awesome, small world experience, because I have so many referrals from the different pediatricians, and Prime Pediatrics is one of them, definitely. But I think one thing I've learned, I've been in this position for almost 6 years now as the director. I took over a program that was failing. We were one of the worst Babies Can't Wait programs in the state of Georgia. We were at the bottom of our 18 districts. And pat myself on the back, because no one else will. We're one of the top programs in the state now. The state of Georgia, we have a what they call an annual performance rating, that we have to meet certain standards for the federal government every year. And across the board, the state of Georgia does very well. Because of COVID, the last few years, our ratings have gone down. We expected this. Our rating for this coming year is our lowest ever, which shocked everyone. And the state of Georgia is going to have to do more monitoring of the districts, et cetera. I found out because my direct supervisor at the state knew I needed encouragement, because I found out I wasn't going to get more funding to hire more people to help me. So I'm working more hours. to cover my program. But she knew I needed encouragement, and she told me, she goes, by the way, you got the highest rating again this year, so you're not going to have to do the extra work the other districts are going to do. And I was like, oh, thank you. I needed that so much. But I think as far as what I've had to do as a manager is earn the respect of my contractors, my employees, my community partners. I had to rebuild that reputation that was lost in our community. I still get phone calls and they're like, well, can you double check that? Make sure that's really what's going on with that family. I'm like, I said, and I'll get on our program, our database program. I'm like, this is what is said. I know my service coordinator. I know this provider. This is what's in the progress notes. This is what's going on with the family. I said, you can trust what's going on. Or this family really has had no contact, and I'm sorry that the parent told you otherwise, but sometimes the parents will lie to you because they lie to us. But I've had to be consistent and with everyone so that they understand that I am consistent and I'm going to tell you the truth, because they haven't had that. Before me, they had so much inconsistency in our program, and our program was failing. And you get a bad reputation, it's hard to build that reputation back up. So I've had to work very hard, very long hours to build that reputation back up for our district. And it's been a good run. It's been very beneficial, but still got a lot of work to do. And I'm hoping and praying the state will give me more money next year so I can hire extra staff. They know the need is there, and I know I've got other people praying for that funding to come in next year. So everyone pray for more funding from the state office for me. But yeah, we have a lot of community partners that we're grateful for those referrals, because otherwise we wouldn't know there's children are out there that need the help, because we're not in the field unless we don't get into the homes until people refer children to us. So.
We got a couple minutes, Sean, and we'll end with
Give
that.
myself
Close
60
with that.
seconds.
That's impossible for him.
Watch. Okay, there's work is not secular and church is not sacred. It's all sacred.
That's good.
Every one of you are called to full-time Christian ministry. You ever heard somebody say, I've been called to full-time ministry, I got to get my Bible degree so I can teach all the time in the church. Minister means to serve. Okay? It means to serve. So we are all called to full-time Christian ministry wherever we are. Do your work as you do it unto the Lord. Commit your way to Him, and you will have your own full-time ministry. Amen?
Amen.
Told you I could do it.
All right. Well, this has been fun. We have very few programs here on purpose because you're the program to the community. I believe the Lord's changing the wineskin. The wineskin for centuries, or at least decades, has been you come to the church to get ministered to. Our philosophy is teach you how to minister, and then you do it out there. I mean, if they come here, we obviously minister, but it's more about training and sending. Starting in October, we'll start up our training program, our sending program. You'll hear about that. It's 4 parts. It goes 9 months. You can go in and out anytime you want to. This year, we're going to do it on Monday nights. And so, but this is the program, what she's doing, what you're doing, because it's just so much closer to the people. The first little module teaches you how to hear God's voice and some basics, and because that's the key. But I appreciate you guys. Give them a clap there. And